The Meg, aka Megalodon, roamed the oceans long after dinosaurs were wiped out by the Great Meteorite. It was one of the largest and most dangerous hunters that have ever lived on Earth, as well as the biggest shark. But then, about 3.6 million years ago, the last of its kind disappeared from our planet, leaving only huge teeth for modern archaeologists to keep finding. There are a few theories about why it could have happened, but scientists might have found the true reason. The Megalodon, which means big tooth, was the largest shark ever to exist. It reportedly lived around 20 to 3.6 million years ago and was truly enormous. Its bite was more powerful than that of a T-Rex, and likely any other powerful predator that has ever roamed this planet. It's probably not surprising, since this marine creature had extremely strong jaws that could span from 9 to 10 feet wide. That's enough to swallow two grown-up people side by side. The jaws were also lined with 276 teeth, and they reached 7 inches in length. That's as long as a small hedgehog. Once these teeth got worn down, the shark got rid of them and grew new ones. Such large sedated teeth helped the Meg to eat meat easily. The shark itself could grow up to 59 feet long. That's twice the length of a London double-decker bus. The animal was also pretty heavy. While a fully grown T-Rex weighed about 8 tons, the weight of a large Megalodon could be more than 30 tons. With no competitors, the enormous shark was the real king of the oceans. It hunted other sharks, large fish, and even whales. Then why did such a magnificent creature disappear from the face of the Earth? The previous theories mentioned the great white shark. The Megalodon is usually described as some gigantic version of this marine animal. And this is a common mistake made because most people think these creatures were related. But in reality, the Meg looked more like a modern bull shark. Its snout was snout, its lower jaw was rather flat, and long and massive pectoral fins supported the animal's weight. But what's more important, the ancestors of today's great whites existed at the same time as the Megalodon. Now, with great size comes great clumsiness. And although the Meg was huge and powerful, it was also not as nimble as smaller and quicker great white sharks. Great whites could have rivaled a Megalodon for food, and were often more successful hunters thanks to their agility. They couldn't fight the Meg openly, but were fast enough to steal its food. So according to this theory, the only food left for the Megalodon were whales and equally big marine animals. Grown-up Megs could easily catch such beasts, but their offspring were much smaller and more vulnerable than their parents. Could smaller sharks have used this to their advantage? Maybe while megasharks were still little, they became a meal for great whites, as well as bull and tiger sharks. Even at those times, a great white shark could reach the length of 20 feet, while a Megalodon kid was definitely smaller. But even if there had been no open confrontation between young Megalodons and smaller grown-up sharks, Meg kids wouldn't have been able to find food for themselves to grow to adulthood. The reason is the same. The population of other sharks was growing, and they were rivaling each other and the Meg for convenient food. The more great whites and other sharks appeared in the oceans, the less food remained for young monster sharks. Eventually, they probably starved. But it's just one of the theories that try to explain why the Meg went extinct, and here's another one. A new study has shown that the Meg was most likely a warm-blooded predator able to regulate its body temperature, and that might have been the reason why this species disappeared with time. Scientists analyzed isotopes of the tooth enamel of the Megalodon and concluded that the animal could easily maintain a body temperature that was around 13 degrees F warmer than the temperature of the surrounding water. Such a temperature difference is much greater than what other sharks living at the same time as the Meg had, and it's large enough for the ancient predator to be classified as warm-blooded. These days, most fish are cold-blooded. Their body temperature is the same as the surrounding water, but some sharks, like mackerel sharks, keep the temperature of all parts of their bodies a bit warmer than the surrounding water. But it doesn't make them completely warm-blooded because they simply store heat generated by their muscles. And in mammals, body temperature is regulated by a special region of the brain called the hypothalamus. Anyway, the Meg's warmer body allowed the animal to move faster, deal with cold water better, and spread out all over the world. But eventually, it might have led to a disaster. The Megalodon lived during the Pliocene epoch, pronunciation. It began approximately 5.3 million years ago and finished 2.5 million years ago. During that period, global cooling occurred. It also caused the changes in sea level, which the Megalodon probably didn't survive. The main problem for the predator was to maintain an energy level allowing its body temperature to remain elevated. But to do it, the animal had to eat a lot, and I mean it. But it was a challenging task in a time of changing marine ecosystems and while competing with newcomers, such as the great white shark. If this theory is true, then the amount of energy the Meg had to use to remain warm could have contributed to its extinction. This new information is very important to us. It shows that many marine predators in modern oceans might be experiencing the effects of ongoing climate change too. By the way, have you heard that there have been several cases when people were sure they had seen the Meg? Or at least some similar extremely large monsters. And these sightings happened relatively recently. For example, in July 1916, the New Jersey coast of the US was terrified by a series of shark attacks. They happened during an oppressive heat wave when hundreds of beachgoers tried to find shelter from the heat near the water. People described the culprit that had caused all that havoc as a giant shark, much bigger than any regular one. Since then, scientists have been debating which shark species was involved in those accidents. The most popular guesses have been the bull shark and the great white. A picture of a huge shark roaming the Pacific Ocean not far from Guadalupe Island appeared in 1999. The creature was nicknamed Deep Blue. It could be distinguished from others by a wavy pattern separating its gray back and white belly. But even though some people claimed it could be the infamous Megalodon, experts came to the conclusion it was a female white shark, the largest ever seen. The average length of a male white shark is 11 to 13 feet. Females are bigger, up to 15 or 16 feet, but Deep Blue reached more than 20 feet in length. No wonder people were confused. For the last time, Deep Blue was spotted in 2013 near the western coast of Mexico's Baja California. But look, there's another jumbo shark, and you can meet it in any part of the world. The largest specimens can reach 40 feet long and weigh about 5 or even 6 tons. Could it be, if not the Megalodon itself, but one of its relatives? Again, a wrong guess. That's the basking shark. This animal prefers subpolar seas, with temperatures not higher than 58 degrees F. Even though some of these animals do migrate to warmer places. Like whale sharks, basking sharks are harmless and don't attack snorkelers or divers. These creatures have loads of small teeth, but they don't use them when feeding. Instead, they swim with their huge mouths open and swallow plankton. A grown-up basking shark can filter nearly 2,000 tons of water per hour.
Many terrifying animals live deep beyond the waves, like this vampire squid living 3,000 feet below the surface in almost complete darkness. This animal has a cloak, like a vampire's. That's why it's called the vampire squid. Deep down at the bottom, it can't use ink to defend itself. So this animal has developed an unusual tactic. It glows slightly to scare away predators. If this tactic fails, the vampire squid can turn its body inside out, revealing tiny spikes. When you translate its scientific name, Vampiroteuthis infernalis, it literally means vampire squid from the nether. Despite its terrifying looks, it's a harmless ocean animal. This previous creature was not from space, but this object definitely is. Before Elon Musk found a way to reuse rockets, NASA would simply drop old ones after launching astronauts into space, most of the time in the ocean or deserts. In 2012, Jeff Bezos launched a mission to find the Apollo 11 rocket. They found it by using sonar, but it was in terrible condition. It was sitting on the bottom of the ocean, not far from the predicted site. They were able to rescue the engine and reconstruct 2 of them. The most famous lost city is Atlantis, but sadly, we still haven't discovered it. However, Heraklion was also just a myth until one British pilot saw something that looked like a city while flying over the Mediterranean Sea. He reported it, and 60 years later, a group of divers went there. They were shocked when they found an entire city underwater. It was loaded with artifacts that could tell us a lot about the history of the place. Now it's one of the best underwater archaeological sites in the world. It's believed that the rising sea caused the whole city to go underwater. The Titanic sank in 1912. The wreck was claimed to be officially discovered 74 years later. In reality, though, a fisherman found the Titanic 8 years earlier while fishing in the Atlantic Ocean. He was pulling out his net when he spotted a head stuck in it. Luckily, it was just a doll's head. Years later, after the fisher had passed away, his son sold the doll to a doll collector. She did a lot of digging and research on every person who had a porcelain toy on the Titanic. She found the owner of the doll. Ava Hart was on the Titanic and had a doll with her. Ava survived the catastrophe by a miracle, but her toy didn't. Hart even wrote about the doll in her journal, and every detail matched the toy found by the fisherman. The tripod fish lives deep in the abyssal zone, around 20,000 feet below the surface. It's adapted to such immense depths and uses its tripod fins to stay still on the bottom. This creature doesn't have big eyes, but even if it did, these eyes would be useless in the darkness. Instead, the tripod fish uses its fins like antennas to detect any movement in the water. This creature doesn't have much luck when it comes to its love life, so it had to develop unique tactics to reproduce. One fish can be both male and female. The next bizarre creature is the lizardfish. It has tons of razor-sharp teeth, a huge mouth, and really big eyes, which it uses for hunting. All this makes the animal look freaky. The lizardfish lives at depths of around 11,000 feet in the midnight zone, where there is zero light. This freak of nature basically eats everything it can fit inside its mouth, from small fish to other lizardfish. On the other hand, when they see other reptile fish, they probably fall in love instead, because finding mates at those depths is not an easy task. Like the tripod fish, the lizardfish can be both male and female at the same time. When you think of a river, you usually picture it on land. Still, nature is quite unpredictable, and it created a river flowing under the ocean in California. It's running at a depth of around 2 miles. This river has everything that an ordinary river has: sunken logs, trees, and rocks. And despite its uniqueness, it's not the only one in the world. There are also others in the Amazon and Greenland. A terrifying creature was discovered near Angola's coast by a remote operating vehicle. It looks like it doesn't have a head or a body. It was sitting at a depth of around 4,350 feet below the surface. After doing research, scientists concluded it wasn't anything from a sci-fi movie. It was just a cluster of siphonophores stuck together. In 2015, some random guy was diving in Caesarea, and something shiny caught his eye. He reached out, grabbed it, and realized it was a gold coin. After that, he examined the bottom and found out that there were many more. He reported the incident to the local authorities, and they concluded that he had found Arabic treasure. The coins were made of solid 24-karat gold and were a few thousand years old. But due to the perfect salinity and temperature, they looked brand new. The coins belonged to a ship carrying cargo. It was caught up in a storm and unfortunately sank. One of the weirdest things ever discovered was found in the Baltic Sea. It's an anomaly that looks as if it was created by a different civilization. It was discovered by Swedish researchers, and they basically had no idea what it was. They had to ask tons of other scientists for their opinions. When you look at this formation from above, it's 200 feet long and looks exactly like a fallen spaceship. It's hard to believe that it's a natural formation, but spoiler alert, it's totally made by nature because the Baltic Sea has gone through many erosions throughout history. Most likely, the bizarre formation is the result of these processes. A group of divers in Madagascar were shocked when they found this 7-foot monstrosity of a knife on the seafloor. The speculation started immediately, and many said that the knife was from some giants that had fought megalodons and lived on Earth thousands and thousands of years ago. That could make a nice story, but the knife is most likely a movie prop that was lost at sea. One of the ocean's most bizarre animals is the frilled shark. It's believed that this fish is the reason for all those sea serpent stories that sea explorers of the past wrote about. These animals live pretty deep in the ocean, but sometimes they can be seen in shallow waters. It's super rare, but possible. The frilled shark has a big mouth sporting around 300 teeth. It also has a long body that looks like a lizard's, and it is truly a unique species of shark. Its prey can be half of its size because this shark's stomach is like that of a snake, and it can swallow huge fish or crustaceans. Spotting a few worms in your garden is no big deal, but after seeing a 26-foot long one in the ocean, you will make your wetsuit a little wetter. This worm is super rare, and it's completely harmless to humans. It's actually not a giant worm. It's a cluster of zooids that are stuck together in a worm-shaped formation. They usually only eat plankton, bacteria, and other tiny things that can be found in the ocean. Probably the scariest thing in the ocean that is 100% real is the magna pinna, which can be found at crazy depths of 20,000 feet below the surface. This monster looks like an underwater Slender Man, but it's just a squid with really long tentacles that can reach a terrifying size of 8 feet. This guy has only been seen a few times, and basically, we don't know much about this creature so far.
You are a marine biologist who is on a mission to explore organisms that live in the deeper and darker parts of the ocean. As you prepare to dive, your ship's object detection system starts beeping. Something within the water is approaching, and it's really fast, and it seems like it's a Megalodon! You try to take your oxygen tank and other diving equipment off to prepare for what's to come. But in the blink of an eye, the Megalodon attacks your ship, breaking it into 2 pieces like the Titanic. You fall into the cold waters of the ocean. You immediately try to swim back to the surface in a panic, but the Megalodon notices you. You know you're not fast enough to escape. As the Megalodon swims towards you, your survival instinct takes control. You curl your body to minimize its surface area and decrease your risk of injury. Then the Megalodon opens its 11-foot wide mouth. The force of the water pushes you against the back of its throat, which is wide enough to fit a small car. Fortunately, you are able to grab onto one of its 276 teeth as tightly as you can until its jaw slaps shut with a loud banging sound. Thanks to that, you don't immediately end up in its stomach. You are in its mouth, standing on its tongue, which is almost larger than a couch. With panic, you try to push your way out of its mouth, but its jaw muscles are extremely strong. You start waiting for it to open its mouth on its own so that you'll swim out. But when it finally does, the water pressure is so strong that it even pushes you further back from its throat. You try holding onto the roof of its mouth, but it is too slippery for you to get a grip on. So you finally end up in its stomach. It's so dark inside there. While your eyes slowly adjust, you start hearing its heart. There is still no oxygen, so you keep your diving gear on. Good thing you didn't get a chance to take it off before. However, if you were able to take your snorkel off, it would smell rotten due to the methane gases. You start looking around and see the stomach is full of the remains of the Megalodon's previous meals. There are skeletal remains of fish and sharks all around, and even other divers who weren't as lucky as you. Fortunately, the wetsuit you're wearing is super protective. You start feeling more pressure around you, which means the Megalodon started its descent deeper into the ocean. The rising panic causes your muscles to twitch. You start feeling extremely exhausted. That's why you need to do something now and do something fast if you want to make it out alive. You remember that your diving equipment includes an emergency knife. It's small, but it's really sharp. You take that out and try cutting through the Megalodon's skin. The Megalodon's swimming slowly gets weird as you continue trying to cut your way out. You can tell it doesn't want you inside itself anymore, so it finally barfs you out, making you the only survivor of a Megalodon attack.
It was the largest fish our Earth had ever seen, and its bite was strong enough to crush a car. The largest of its teeth found was the length of a remote control. It consumed about 2,500 pounds of food a day. That's like 3,300 cans of tuna for you. The earliest Megalodon fossils are from about 20 million years ago, but you won't see its skeleton, and that's because the mighty Meg had no bones. A skeleton made from bones gives most animals their body shape and strength. Sharks, though, come from the same subclass as rays, skates, and sawfish and have cartilage instead of bones. Cartilage is a tissue that is softer and more flexible than bones, but it's still tough enough to shape the body and protect the internal organs. Some areas are more flexible since cartilage is weaker, and some, like the shark's head, are much tougher thanks to calcified cartilage. Their snouts, though, are made of really soft and flexible cartilage to work like a bumper in case of a collision with some dangers. Who knows if they'd be able to do all this with a heavy skeleton? Plus, cartilage makes their jaws more flexible, and they can open their mouths much wider than they would with a jaw made of bone. Our hero, Meg, was no exception, and it had the strongest bite of all living creatures, which was also made possible by a skeleton made of cartilage. Sharks take full advantage of their cartilage. It helps them swim and turn fast while hunting. One drawback of this type of skeleton is that it was really tricky for scientists to establish the shape and size of Meg. Normally, they would do it using fossilized bone skeletons or their parts. With Meg, they had to guess based on the teeth they found and comparisons with living relatives. A more recent 3D computer model was based partially on scans of a preserved spine discovered in the 1860s. The model showed that Meg was bigger, faster, and even hungrier than scientists had previously thought. Looks like an average Megalodon was 52 feet long. That's slightly bigger than the height of the Hollywood sign and weighed 10 times as heavy as an elephant. There were also much bigger creatures. Scientists still aren't sure how the Megalodon got this size. The fact that there were bigger and smaller Megs probably has to do with a little something called Bergmann's rule. It says that the temperature of the surrounding environment affects the animal's body size because they either need to conserve or shed heat. The Megalodons that reached cooler waters probably needed more body weight to make sure they survived in low temperatures. Those living in warmer waters had to be smaller to avoid burning up. If the researchers were correct in their calculations, it also means that Meg reached a cruising speed of over 3 miles per hour, which is much faster than other sharks. The still-living great white shark can cover a distance of nearly 7,000 miles without stopping, which is 9/10 as long as the diameter of Earth. It looks like the Megalodon could have gone much further. Megalodons managed to survive on our planet for nearly 70 times longer than humans have. They were roaming the oceans for around 20 million years, and you could see them pretty much anywhere except near the poles. Scientists discovered the most northern fossils off the coast of Denmark and the most southern in New Zealand. The reason why there were no Megalodon teeth found in Antarctica is most likely that these adapted to only warm tropical and subtropical waters. The younger ones like to keep to the shores, while full-grown adults preferred coastal areas, but they could easily move into the open ocean as well. When our planet went through a period of global cooling and drying, and the seas began to freeze around 3.6 million years ago, there was less and less room for Meg to thrive. Much of their prey, like smaller whales, seals, and sea turtles, disappeared or relocated to waters that were too cold for our hero. And at the same time, the number of its natural competitors, like smaller predatory sharks, like the great white shark, and whales, increased. This shifting food chain dynamics could have been even more dangerous for the Meg than the cold ocean water. You're used to seeing them on the big screen as heartless monsters, but these huge sharks were actually loving and caring family guys. Scientists discovered several Megalodon nursery areas in Florida, Maryland, Panama, and off the coast of Spain. It looks like they gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. Then, little Megs would stay there with adults protecting and raising them until they were ready to fight off predators. The mighty Meg had 276 teeth in 5 rows in its mouth. Similar to other sharks, it was fast in replacing its worn-out or lost teeth. With 4 or 5 rows of teeth in its mouth, it basically acted like a conveyor belt, able to grow back damaged or missing teeth. This means that an adult megalodon probably would have grown several thousand teeth throughout its lifetime. Although the great white shark is often mentioned as Meg's closest relative, they'd hardly be distant cousins. The ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the Meg, but they weren't best friends and even rivaled each other. The great white shark wouldn't win in a head-to-head fight with a Meg, but it was a better hunter using its smaller size and agility to snap up the giant's prey quickly. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the Meg, but its food supplies began to run out as the whales swam to the cooler new seas. Rather than a great white, the Megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. We also speak of Meg as an extinct giant, but can we be 100% sure it isn't hiding somewhere as we speak? After all, we've only explored 5% of our oceans altogether. The Mariana Trench is the deepest oceanic trench on Earth, and you could dip the whole of Mount Everest in its deepest part, and over a mile of it would still be above the surface. If a megalodon or two needed a place to hide, that would be the perfect spot. It wouldn't be the coziest place to live, though, with its cold water and total darkness. Plus, the pressure there is 1,000 times stronger than at sea level. So, if a Meg really were hiding down there, it would have serious issues with its teeth, because calcium would dissolve under that pressure. To survive here, it would also need to learn to navigate in complete darkness. That means it would have either become bioluminescent or evolve to grow massive eyes like the giant squid. If the Meg were still around and true to its dietary choices, it would have to eat smaller fish, and that would be a problem for us humans. Especially those of us who love fish, that is. And the ocean isn't cooling down these days. The Megalodon would love its temperature and would thrive and reproduce faster than ever. Those giants would create some massive problems for cargo ships and cruising vessels. In case you're now scared at the thought of meeting a Megalodon, relax. Most scientists don't think it's possible because of our hero's size. Most foods that megalodons like to eat live in shallow ocean areas and not in the deep, deep sea. Meg would need to come up for dinner every now and then, and it's kinda hard to miss a creature this big. They're both giant prehistoric creatures to us, but the megalodons and the dinosaurs never actually coexisted. The dinosaurs probably died out about 66 million years ago. Megalodons seem to have appeared a bit later.
One of the SCP Foundation bases is located somewhere at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. This top-secret place is ideal for securing, containing, and protecting humanity from weird, terrible, and very dangerous creatures and objects. Every morning, staff with high-level access check all the mysterious beings kept in cages. SCP-87 is a room with a dark staircase leading to pitch darkness. The object itself is a pale face without pupils and a nose. The object hasn't been studied yet and represents an average level of danger. Object SCP-337 is a mass of ordinary human hair weighing 130 pounds. It probably has intelligence, can move in any direction, and control each of its hairs. It attracts all the nearby strands of hair to increase its mass. It's unknown what size the object can reach with an unlimited supply of hair. Represents an average level of danger. Object SCP-432 is a small locker with a huge network of intricate tunnels and mazes inside. The object is safe, but unexplored. Object SCP-682 is a colossal reptile the size of a bus that can transform its body. It's practically invulnerable, can regenerate, resist any damage, and adapt to any danger. It has intelligence and doesn't like people. The object is extremely dangerous and still unexplored. Stop. Wait a minute. Where is Object SCP-682? Its cell is empty. Oh no, it's escaped! Hit the alarm! The huge reptile that cannot be destroyed is lurking somewhere in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean. It's grown fins and gills to feel comfortable underwater. It's heading to the mainland for one purpose: to enjoy its freedom and scare people. 10 submarines and 20 cruisers begin patrolling the area using high-precision echolocation technologies. The reptile couldn't have gone far. A signal appears on one of the radars. Some huge object is floating toward the ship at great speed, but it's not SCP-682. It's something much bigger. This is Meg, short for the Megalodon, a giant ancient shark. Usually they were the size of a train car, but this shark is enormous, like a Boeing airliner. Ships and submarines have disturbed this ancient monster. It approaches one of the cruisers and breaks through the hull. The boat is sinking fast. At this moment, another dot appears on the radar. This is SCP-682. The reptile quickly swims to the shark. They look at each other for a few seconds. SCP-682 is much smaller than the Megalodon, but it has intelligence and the ability to regenerate and transform its body. The first reason for this, it's faster than the Megalodon. The shark swims quite slowly because of its gigantic size and weight. It lacks agility. The reptile can grow several fins and move 4 times more quickly than Meg. Another reason, Meg only has 2 eyes. It can't see anything with its back turned. SCP-682 can grow several additional eyes on any part of its body, if it wants to. Besides, the limbs of the Megalodon are its fins and a large tail. It only uses them for swimming. SCP-682 can have up to 10 limbs. These can be paws with claws or tentacles. It can grow arms with sharp spikes or bone ridges. It can attack or defend itself with them, take objects, or destroy something. But there's one thing that can help defeat the reptile: jaws. The Megalodon has about 300 large sharp teeth. Each of them is the size of a human palm. But SCP-682 can grow 1,000 small teeth, like those of a piranha or crocodile. The reptile can grow anything, but it can't increase its strength. The power of the Megalodon's jaw is much greater. It can easily bite through the ship's metal hull or firmly grasp SCP-682. The only problem is that the reptile can recover from any damage caused by the shark. Besides, it's too fast and can quickly escape the toothy mouth. The chances of success for the shark are minimal. SCP-682 has already calculated all the weaknesses of its enemy. And now, an epic show begins. 2 monsters are swimming towards each other. The Megalodon opens its mouth to catch the beast, but the reptile deftly dodges it. The shark pushes the enemy with its giant tail. The force of the impact is equal to the force of a 5-story building falling on the ground. SCP-682 flies off to the side and loses consciousness. But after a few moments, it opens its eyes. The creature recovers in 3 seconds. Razor-sharp crests now grow in its hands. SCP-682 can easily win with these limbs. It's swimming toward the shark, but at this moment, several strong nets fall on the reptile. This is help from people. The reptile cuts through the nets, while the giant shark opens its mouth and bites the crests off SCP-682. Then it catches the reptile in its jaws. Inside the shark's mouth, SCP-682 regenerates completely and tries to escape. Meg spits the enemy out. The reptile grows large bone maces on its hands. It's going to use them like hammers, but the thick skin of the fish provide good protection, so these upgraded arms are useless. The shark just doesn't feel anything. It twists and tries to catch SCP-682 in its jaws once more, but the reptile quickly swims away. SCP-682 realizes it won't defeat Meg in open combat, so it shrinks to the size of a small salmon. The shark loses sight of the enemy. At this point, SCP-682 swims inside the opponent's mouth and gets into its stomach. The shark starts to panic. It starts thrashing around and spinning. Something is happening inside its body. Then the Megalodon spits out SCP-682 and slowly sinks to the seabed. Meg is defeated. SCP-682 has won. It was obvious. People throw nets on SCP-682, but it cuts them into tiny threads. It climbs onto one of the ships and smashes the vessel. People run away and jump into the water. SCP-682 hits the deck of the ship. The monster wants to move on to the next boat, but notices several big fins in the water. A few dots appear on the radar. These are 5 Megalodons. They're swimming here to avenge their friend. SCP-682 jumps back into the water. Sharks surround it from all sides. They take turns trying to catch it. The reptile manages to dodge the first, second, and third one. The fourth shark finally grabs it. SCP-682 covers itself with stone scales. The fifth Meg bites the reptile from the other side, but SCP-682 doesn't feel the bite. Its skin is strong enough to resist the shark's teeth, but still, it decides to change its strategy. The monster then makes itself tiny and flat to slip out of the Megalodon's jaws. Then it grows a hard shell and hides inside it like a turtle. Sharks can't chew through the shield. They toss SCP-682 in different directions like a ball. Sharp thorns begin to grow out of the shell. They scratch sharks' noses. They can't do anything. Right at this moment, a round bath escape gets lowered into the water. It moves up to the hidden reptile and opens the door. The water gets inside along with the monster. SCP-682 can't go anywhere. It's inside a high-strength carbon steel chamber. It tries to break out, but it's pointless. Sharks are not satisfied with this. They want revenge. One of them bites through the cable of the bath escape. It sinks to the seabed and hits the reef. The sharks tear through the material, and SCP-682 manages to get out. The Megalodons attack the reptile, but it uses its sharp spikes to scare them away. Then SCP-682 becomes furious. Sharks swim away from it. The monster has won again. At this moment, a powerful earthquake begins. The seabed cracks, and a giant tentacle climbs out of a huge crevice. It seems that SCP-682 has a new opponent, and this is a kraken. The reptile is about to defeat this monster too. But this story is for another video. It was one of the biggest creatures ever to roam the Earth. It was longer than your average school bus and could easily weigh more than 10 elephants combined. But where did it live? How did it end up having this size? And most importantly, why is it extinct nowadays? Let's find out. The Megalodon was the largest predator ever known in our planet's history. In terms of its location, the Megalodon lived practically in all waters on our globe, except near the poles. The reason why there were no Megalodon teeth found in Antarctica is probably that the gigantic creature adapted to only warm tropical and subtropical waters. The younger ones liked to keep to the shores, while full-grown adults preferred coastal areas, but they could easily move into the open ocean as well. How do we know the Megalodon was so widely spread? We can only presume, based on the fact that they discovered the most northern fossils off the coast of Denmark and the most southern in New Zealand. The discussion of how the Megalodon got this size is still open in the scientific community. They recently found out that not all the specimens from this fascinating species reach the same huge size. This has to do with a little something called the Bergmann's Rule, which says that the temperature of the surrounding environment affects the animal's body size because they either need to conserve or shed heat. The Megalodons that reach cooler waters probably needed more body weight to make sure they survived in low temperatures. On the contrary, those living in warmer waters had to be smaller to avoid burning up. But what did this enormous fish look like? Most modern depictions show the Megalodon resembling an enormous great white shark. But well, it seems it may not necessarily be correct. The Megalodon likely had a much shorter nose and a flatter jaw that looked almost squashed when compared with a great white shark. It also seems to have something in common with the modern blue shark: extra-long pectoral fins. They needed these to support their weight and size while navigating the planet's waters. Lastly, the lady Megalodons, seem to have been about twice as large as the gentlemen. As for their offspring, even a small Megalodon was enormous, at least 6.5 feet from nose to tail. How do we know that? Because specialists have stumbled upon Megalodon nursery habitats in Panama, Maryland, the Canary Islands, and Florida. Even the piles of used diapers were enormous. Nah, not really. Surely the scariest aspect of the Megalodon's looks was its mouth. I mean, think about it. Megalodon had whales for dinner, so it obviously needed to open its mouth wide enough. Scientists have estimated that its jaw would span a mind-boggling size, 9 by 11 feet wide. Just to paint you a better picture, that means it could have easily gulped down 2 adult people side by side. Wait, which 2 adults? Those impressive jaws also feature 276 teeth. Based on modern reconstructions of the force of its bite, it looks like it may have been one of the most, if not the most, powerful animals of prey ever to exist. For comparison, humans can have a bite force of around 1,300 newtons. Today, great white sharks have been estimated to be able to bite down with a force of over 18,000 newtons. The Megalodon tops all the records, with an estimated power of bite up to 10 times greater than that. It could basically crush a car with very little effort. Its teeth were also pretty amazing. Similar to sharks, the Megalodon was fast in replacing its broken or worn teeth. With 4 or 5 rows of teeth in its mouth, it basically acted like a conveyor belt, growing back damaged or missing teeth within about 48 hours. This means that an adult Megalodon probably would have grown several thousand teeth throughout its lifetime. It was nice of them to do that, though, since it's probably one of the reasons why Megalodon teeth are so common in fossil records, and we're able to study them properly. To maintain its impressive physique, the Megalodon had to eat somewhere around 2,500 pounds of food per day. Can't wrap your head around that? Well, it was the equivalent of 1¼ cows per day to survive. It's like if you had to eat 3,300 cans of tuna every day. I've used the word Megalodon a lot, but have I mentioned where it comes from? When translated from Greek, it means giant tooth. Ah, those clever Greeks. However, this giant shark's full scientific name is a bit more complicated: Carcharocles megalodon. But are these gigantic predators actually extinct? We tend to believe so, but let's be honest for a second. We've come to know more about the surface of Mars than the depths of our oceans. Like, we've only explored 15% of our oceans altogether. Who knows what may be lying out there in the deep? Maybe some ancient predators? The Mariana Trench is the deepest oceanic trench on Earth. The Challenger Deep, its deepest part, is so deep that you could dip the whole of Mount Everest in there and it would still be over a mile above the surface. That's deep. If a Megalodon or two ever needed a place to crash, that would be a discreet enough location. However, the Mariana Trench is not a particularly comfy place to be in. Because it's cold and steeped in total darkness and all. The temperatures here are around 36 degrees Fahrenheit all year round. And to top it all off, the pressure is 1,000 times stronger than at sea level. So it's safe to assume that if any Megalodon is hiding in here, its teeth and bones might not be looking so good. Because of the intense pressure here in the Mariana Trench, proteins and calcium start to dissolve and disintegrate. That's why, for example, the Haddell snailfish, the deepest dwelling fish we've discovered, has evolved to feature flexible cartilage instead of bones. To survive here, the Megalodon would also need to learn to navigate in complete darkness. That means they would have to either become luminescent or evolve to grow massive eyes like the giant squid. While it may sound like an intriguing and good idea for a movie script, most scientists don't think it's possible. Why? Well, most of them say it's because of the Megalodon's size. Most foods that Megalodons like to eat live in shallow ocean areas and not in the deep, deep sea. Specialists believe that if these animals were actually still roaming our waters, there's no way we wouldn't know about it. They would need to come up for dinner every now and then, right? Their food is also the most likely cause of why the Megalodon is not alive anymore. While some specialists believe the Megalodon became extinct because of a drop in the ocean water temperature, most scientists suggested that the shifting food chain dynamics may have been more to blame. Why? Because at some point, there was less and less of its primary food source, baleen whales, and at the same time, the numbers of its natural competitors, like smaller predatory sharks like the great white shark and whales, increased. The Megalodon did live on this planet a lot more than we did, and way back when we didn't even exist yet. They were here for nearly 70 times longer than we, modern humans, have, inhabiting the oceans for around 20 million years. Homo sapiens appeared around 300,000 years ago. The Megalodon managed to survive for so long mostly because of its unbeatable size. I mean, they can make a meal out of almost everything in the sea at the time. We may think about both of them as prehistoric creatures, but the Megalodons and the dinosaurs never coexisted on Earth. The dinosaurs probably died out about 66 million years ago. Megalodons seem to have appeared a bit later. That's because the oldest Megalodon fossils we have yet discovered are from the Miocene epoch, which began 23 million years ago. So long, Meg.
The Megalodon was the biggest shark to ever live. Not only that, it's one of the biggest fish and the largest predator in Earth's history. Over 3 times longer than the biggest great white shark on record, the females have also been found to be twice the size of the males. The Megalodon could swallow a small car without even touching its teeth, if cars had been around then. In fact, the Meg was so big and powerful that it had no natural predators. It was the uncrowned king of the seas, swimming freely from ocean to ocean. This cosmopolitan creature was found all over the world, from America to Europe and Australia and Japan, assuming there were countries back then. Meg fossils have been found on every continent except Antarctica. Everybody skips Antarctica. Science tells us that the Megalodon went extinct over 3.6 million years ago, but could they still be alive at the deepest depths of the ocean? The fearsome name, Megalodon, comes from 2 Greek words, megas, meaning big, and odont, meaning tooth. Combined, they mean big tooth, and it certainly lived up to its name. Just one of its chompers is the same size as a human head. It had 276 humongous teeth in total, across 5 terrifying rows. In all of history, only a couple of saber-toothed cats and the T-Rex had consistently bigger teeth. Now that's a showdown I'd like to watch. The Megalodon vanished millions of years ago, leaving only huge teeth to be found by modern archaeologists. Only around 80% of the ocean has been explored, so who knows what's lurking at the bottom. If you did manage to make it down, it's unlikely that you'll run into Meg though. The sharks, like us, preferred warm coastal waters. Deep ocean living would be too cold for the beasts, and food would be scarce. Their entire bodies would also have to evolve to avoid being squished by the enormous water pressure down there. It's unlikely that they're still around, but not impossible. Now, about the appearance of the Megalodon. Scientists believe it didn't look like a great white shark. The Megalodon belongs to a different fish family and most likely looked like a giant sand tiger shark. Flattened snout, small eyes. Its dorsal fin moved backward. The sand shark has 2 dorsal fins about the same size. The coloration is light brown with a white belly. It may have had brown-red spots like a sand shark all over its body. We used to think of the Megalodon as something scary from the first finds of its fossils. That was back in the Renaissance era. People found some teeth in the rocks. At first, these teeth were thought to be the tongues of dragons or snakes. And here is the first drawing of what the owner of these teeth supposedly looked like. A massive snout with a scary nose and a bunch of razor-sharp teeth. The Megalodon is usually described as a sort of giant great white shark, but this is just a common myth. In fact, the ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the Meg. But they weren't the best buddies and were even in competition with each other. The great white shark was a better hunter, using its smaller size and agility to snap up Meg's prey quickly. They were also known to eat Meg pups, who were only half their size. This didn't help the whole extinction thing. We also have evidence that Megalodons were brutal hunters, kings of the food chain. The first combat tool in their arsenal was the battering ram. The Megalodon would take its prey by surprise. It had only one chance to hit it. If it missed, it would take too long for a second round. The maneuverability of the Megalodon was comparable to a large truck. While a great white was no match for an adult Meg in a head-to-head fight, they sure weren't scared of stealing their food. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the Meg. But its food supplies began to run out as the whales swam to the cooler new seas. The whales adapted to prefer the colder temperatures, leaving our friend the Meg behind. The Megalodons either starved or were frozen into extinction by the Ice Age. Rather than a great white, the Megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. As scary as they are, these sharks were actually caring family guys. Several Megalodon nursery areas have been discovered in Florida, Maryland, and Panama. They gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. We know this from discovering loads of tiny Megalodon teeth found in these areas. I wonder if they had nannies too. But how come there are so many Megalodon teeth out there for us to analyze? Due to their messy, aggressive eating habits, sharks regularly lose their teeth. They lose a set of teeth every 1 to 2 weeks. That's 40,000 teeth in a lifetime. They must rake in a fortune from the tooth fairy. Because of this, their teeth were continually raining down to the ocean floor. Luckily for us, they're also the hardest part of the shark skeleton, which is why so many teeth have survived and become fossilized. It's fair to say the first discoveries of the Meg's teeth confused people. Early discoverers thought that the Meg's teeth were petrified tongues of ancient serpent creatures. They even used to call them tongue stones. It's also a common myth that the Megalodon was around at the same time as the dinosaurs, although this would have been pretty cool. The dinosaurs were wiped out around 66 million years ago, but the Megalodons came much later. The oldest Meg fossil is only around 23 million years old, but it's tricky to pinpoint the exact date. After all, calendars weren't invented yet. They became extinct way before humans even evolved. The earliest Homo sapiens, which is a fancy name for the first humans, emerged about 2.5 million years ago. But what if the Megalodon shark didn't go extinct? Whale populations have dropped drastically since these guys were last around, so there'd be way fewer whales for them to chomp down on. Whales have also gotten a lot smarter and learned new defensive moves, making them way harder to take down. It's estimated that they ate around 12 tons of food each day. The Kraken is a colossal squid, a legendary sea monster, the biggest hunk of calamari you ever saw. And if this monster had existed, the world would have changed beyond recognition. The Kraken has powerful tentacles, solid muscles with suckers at the end. They're impossible to escape. The Kraken can break a ship in half, or just pull it down into the depths. But the worst thing about the Kraken is its size. According to old sailors' stories, its size is almost 10 soccer fields. Hey, maybe the Kraken could play soccer. The Kraken legends said the monster was so giant that sailors mistook it for a small island. In past centuries, it would have been impossible to defeat such a beast. If the Kraken existed in reality, it might have had offspring. Yeah, in all the world's oceans, there would be giant monsters that could sink any ship. It's unlikely that the Kraken would have competitors in its habitat, so its population would grow strongly. Since the Kraken is enormous, it would need a lot of food, so the population of other large sea animals would fall significantly. Blue whales, great white sharks, other giant squids, all the big sea creatures would be endangered. The Kraken belongs to the cephalopod genus. This species includes squid and octopus, some of the most intelligent creatures on the planet. The Kraken is a skilled hunter and will never fight in the open. Colossal squids live in deep waters and they have the largest eyes among all animals. The squid's eye is the size of a dinner plate. Thanks to this, they can see their prey from far away. Similarly, a Kraken would spot the ship much sooner than sonar could pick up the Kraken. It would always have the drop on you. Well, that's not good. In 1857, a squid beak was discovered on the coast of Denmark. Other huge squid remains were found in the Bahamas, and then scientists were convinced that gigantic squids existed. While colossal squid have been officially discovered since then, it's been more than 100 years and we still don't know what the max size they can grow to. The fact is, colossal squids are one of the most elusive creatures on Earth. They live in the depths of the ocean where it's challenging for scientists to reach. Any dive to a greater depth requires powerful, bulky equipment. Underwater bathyscaphs and cameras make a lot of noise and light, which squids notice from afar. They flee before we can see them. It's difficult to say if these huge squids were the size of a small island, but the truth is, we've only studied about 5% of the ocean. It may be that in its depths, monsters much more terrible than the Kraken swim. the giant shark that terrorized the oceans some 20 million years ago. For 13 million years, this 60-ton beast dominated the warm waters of our planet. Though, some believe that the Meg still lives in the most remote and deepest parts of the ocean. It's a hot summer day. It seems only logical to go for a swim in the sea. You're floating on your back, completely relaxed. Your eyes are closed. Your breath is even. Water's pleasantly cool around your body. A light breeze touches your face. You feel calm enough to doze off. Suddenly, something bumps into your leg. Yanked out of your half-slumber, you begin to flail until you're face to face with the invisible danger. Luckily, all you spot is a couple of easily recognizable fins and cute smiley snouts. Phew, just dolphins. Guess you're lucky to meet them in the wild. These amazing creatures are so close, you can touch them. You've heard people say dolphins' skin feels rubbery, but to your mind, it's more like the inner part of a hard-boiled egg. One of the animals is so close to you that its salty smell fills your nostrils. You know, though, that dolphins don't have sweat glands. It means they don't sweat and are pretty much odorless. The smell you sense comes from the water they swim in. The largest and most ferocious predator to ever haunt the oceans, the Megalodon shark dominated the seas for centuries before coming extinct millions of years ago. However, scientists managed to discover very few remnants of the giant shark. Everything we know about the great beast we've learned thanks to fossils of its giant teeth, which are just about the size of the average human hand. A megalodon skeleton has never been discovered. Shark skeletons are made mostly of cartilage, meaning that they decompose quickly. Luckily, sharks continuously shed and regrow teeth throughout their lives. One shark can go through 40,000 teeth in a single lifetime. Scientists have managed to study different types of shark species based on their teeth alone. The Megalodon shark had around 276 teeth. When they fell out, those teeth landed in the seabed where they stayed for millions of years, fossilizing. Scientists found those teeth, and they're the only real record we have of the Megalodon's existence. Megalodon teeth have been discovered all over the world. It means that unlike other marine animals of its time, the Megalodon was intercontinental. Even today, most sharks and marine animals tend to stick to one sea or ocean. The Megalodon shark swam freely around the world, moving between tropical and subtropical waters. Megalodon teeth have been found in every continent apart from the freezing cold waters of Antarctica. When a megalodon makes a starring appearance in a movie or TV show, it's portrayed to look like a giant version of a great white shark. Scientists previously believed that the megalodon and the great white shark both descended from one common ancestor. Still, it's not true. In fact, it's more likely that the megalodon was the arch-enemy of the great white shark's ancestor, the broad-toothed mako shark. That means Megalodon wouldn't have looked so similar to the great white after all. In reality, the Megalodon would have a shorter nose than the great white, along with longer pectoral fins to give the giant shark a stockier and more threatening build. They both had an excellent sense of smell though, so even in prehistoric times, it wasn't a good idea to go swimming with a chunk of raw meat in hand. And it certainly isn't safe now. Whether the Meg's hiding somewhere in the depths, which some still believe is true, or it's gone forever, younger cousins will still be there waiting. Also, both of them like to go after big marine mammals, so they would certainly have things to do together. That is, until the Meg got moody and accidentally ate its friend. You never know. These guys had a different hunting style. Great whites prefer to dive straight towards their prey and find its softest spot, like exposed legs or underbelly. Sometimes, an entire tooth would be found embedded in a bone of some bigger animal, such as a whale. Without the main parts they use for swimming, poor sea animals were then helpless and unable to escape. Yet whales were just a smaller part of Megalodon's diet. Seals, sea cows, squids, dolphins, other sharks. The good old Meg probably wouldn't say no to some random school of smaller fish swimming into its mouth either. Nothing better than a good snack after a big tasty dinner. Even those giant turtles weren't safe with their thick shells. The Meg probably took them as a dare challenge on a daily basis. Scientists have used computer simulations to try and work out the hunting style of the ancient shark. Using this technology, scientists have discovered that the Megalodon's attack style was very different from that of modern-day sharks. Modern sharks dive straight for their prey's most vulnerable spot, For example, the soft underbelly of a seal. The megalodon's teeth were uniquely suited to biting through tougher areas of cartilage. So, evidence suggests that a megalodon would first chew the tougher fins of their prey, rendering them unable to swim away before launching into their final attack. Some people believe that the megalodon is still alive today, lurking at the depths of the ocean's waters, but it's unlikely to be true. Megalodons are a warm water species, which means they would be unable to survive in the cold waters of the deep ocean. Most of the megalodon's potential prey live in shallower waters, meaning there would be very little for the megalodon to eat at deep sea level. Simply put, if there was an animal as big as the megalodon still living today, we would have spotted it by now. It is unlikely that you'll run into a meg though. The sharks, like us, preferred warm coastal waters. Deep ocean living would be too cold for the beasts, and food would be scarce. Their entire bodies would also have to evolve to avoid being squished by the enormous water pressure down there. It's unlikely they're still around, but not impossible. Some good news if you do run into one is that the shark is pretty unlikely to eat you. You are way too small a meal for the megalodon, even if you have a couple of friends with you. This guy eats whales that are over 50 feet long. If you're having a beach party though, it's a different story. In a beach full of swimmers, the shark very well might creep up, scooping several humans into its giant mouth without even chewing. The fearsome name Megalodon comes from two Greek words, megas, meaning big, and odont, meaning tooth. Combined, they mean big tooth, and it certainly lives up to its name. Just one of its chompers is the same size as a human head. It had 276 humongous teeth in total, across 5 terrifying rows. In all of history, only a couple of saber-toothed cats and the T-Rex had consistently bigger teeth. Now that's a showdown I'd like to watch. The Megalodon vanished millions of years ago, leaving only huge teeth to be found by modern archaeologists. They literally disappeared with very few traces left. Scientists believe that over time, deep sea levels dropped and the ocean's temperature went down rapidly. Over a third of all marine life was wiped out as the oceans cooled and the number of animals at the bottom of the food chain plummeted. This had a catastrophic effect on the hungry predators at the top. Sorry guys. It became way too cold for these sun-loving sharks too, which made it difficult for them to reproduce since they gave birth in warm waters. The megalodon is usually described as a sort of great white shark, but this is just a common myth. In fact, the ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the meg, but they weren't best buddies and were even in competition with each other. The great white shark was a better hunter using its smaller size and agility to snap up the meg's prey quickly. They were also known to eat meg pups, who were only half their size. This didn't exactly help the whole extinction thing. While a great white was no match for an adult meg in a head-to-head fight, they sure weren't scared of stealing their food. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the meg, but its food supplies began to run out as whales swam to the cooler new seas. The whales adapted to prefer the colder temperatures, leaving our friend the meg behind. The megalodons either starved or were frozen into extinction by the Ice Age. Rather than a great white, the megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. As scary as they are, these sharks were actually caring family guys. Several megalodon nursery areas have been discovered in Florida, Maryland, and Panama. They gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. We know this from discovering loads of tiny megalodon teeth found in these areas. I wonder if they had nannies too.